Hello, my name is Maria Thompson, and I want to share with you an experience that changed my life forever. In 2018, I had a near-death experience in a horrific accident on a high mountain road. Before that, I was an ordinary woman living with my family, working as a nurse at a local hospital. Although I was Catholic, I had never truly reflected deeply on the meaning of faith and life after death. But after that accident, everything changed. That day, my husband Daniel and I were driving on a dangerous mountain road in Colorado. The road was narrow, with a steep cliff on one side and a deep abyss on the other. We were returning from visiting family, feeling quite relaxed. Suddenly, from a distance, I saw a truck speeding toward us at a terrifying speed. The truck skidded on the rain-slicked road, swerving out of control. I could only scream, "Daniel, watch out." He tried to steer to the right to avoid a collision, but there wasn't enough space. The truck slammed into the side of our car, pushing us off the road. At that moment, everything seemed to slow down. I vividly remember the feeling of my body being thrust forward as the car lost control. Then, a tremendous force of impact struck. Our car flipped and tumbled down the mountainside. Everything plunged into darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer inside the car. Strangely, I saw my body, trapped inside the overturned vehicle. My husband was motionless, blood running from his forehead. I panicked, trying to call out to him, but no sound came out. Then I realized something even stranger. I no longer felt pain, no longer had weight. I was floating in the air. A gentle sensation enveloped me, as if I had been freed from all the constraints of the physical body. I looked down and saw people stopping their cars, running toward the accident site. A woman shouted, "Call an ambulance now, someone is trapped." But I couldn't do anything. I just stood there, or rather, hovered, watching everything unfold. Then a soft breeze passed by, and I felt someone beside me. A hand lightly touched my shoulder. When I turned around, I saw a man dressed in white, his face shining like the sun. "Maria, you do not need to be afraid." His voice was warm, filled with love. I immediately recognized that he was an angel. Immediately afterward, I felt myself being pulled into an infinite space, not frightening, but filled with peace. I saw a brilliant light ahead, brighter than any light on earth, but it didn't hurt my eyes. It seemed to be calling me. I stepped forward and instantly realized I was standing before a massive gate. The gates were made of radiant gold, intricately carved with symbols that I could sense but could not describe in words. Somehow I knew this was the gate of heaven. I heard singing, a beautiful choir, pure and powerful, resonating from within. The hymns I had heard in church now echoed through this boundless space. I felt a presence, something greater than anything I had ever known, a vast, unconditional love. Tears streamed down my face. "Lord, where am I?" And then I heard a gentle yet powerful voice. "Maria, you have always been my child. You have always been loved, even when you did not realize it." My heart overflowed with emotion. I knew without a doubt that it was God. There was no question. I fell to my knees. I felt his presence, not as a distant deity, but as a loving father, always waiting for his lost child to return. I didn't know how long I had been there. It could have been minutes, or it could have been eternity. But then I heard another voice calling me back. "Maria, you cannot stay. You still have work to do." I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay in that light forever. But some force pulled me back. I felt my body once again. A terrible pain surged through me. I heard the sound of ambulance sirens, people's voices around me. I opened my eyes. I was back in the car, trapped. The rescuers shouted, "She's alive. Get her out quickly." They pulled me from the wreckage and placed me on a stretcher. I saw Daniel lying on another stretcher beside me. He was alive too. I wept, not from pain, but because I knew I had just been given a second chance. The transformation. After the experience, after regaining consciousness in the hospital, I felt as if I had just woken up from a long dream, but I knew it wasn't a dream. What I had experienced, the radiant light, the immense love, the absolute peace, was too real to be just a product of my imagination. The doctor said that I had only minor injuries, some bruises and a fractured rib. They couldn't believe that I had survived such a horrific accident. Daniel was also injured, but was not in critical condition. Miraculously, we both had escaped death. But I knew I was no longer the same person. A profound change had occurred within me. I no longer worried about the little things in life. I no longer feared death. I was no longer bound by meaningless ambitions or irrational fears. I had seen heaven. I had felt God's love in a way that words could never fully describe. In the days following the accident, I began to notice that I was more sensitive to the world around me. I could feel other people's emotions more clearly than ever before. I could look into someone's eyes and instantly know whether they were in pain or happy. I felt a deep connection with nature and all living beings. I also started having strange dreams, or perhaps they were memories of past lives. I saw myself as a young girl living in ancient Rome, kneeling in prayer inside a stone church. I saw myself as a farmer in the 18th century, standing in the middle of a wheat field, gazing up at the sky. These dreams were not frightening, but filled with peace, as if they were pieces of a greater journey my soul had taken. But the greatest change was in my faith. Before, I had been a traditional Catholic, attending church on Sundays, occasionally reading the Bible, but never truly experiencing God's presence in a personal way. But after this experience, I knew that God was not a distant entity, but a love that encompassed all things, always waiting for each of us to return to Him. In the months that followed, I decided to completely change my life. I left my job at the hospital and began volunteering at a hospice center. I wanted to be with those who were nearing death, to help them overcome their fears, to help them understand that death is not the end, but merely a doorway to another existence. I also began sharing my story with those who needed to hear it. At first, I was afraid that people would think I was hallucinating or delusional, but miraculously, many people came to me, sharing that they too had experienced something similar. Some had near-death experiences like mine, others had seen deceased loved ones or had prophetic dreams. I realized that there was so much about life after death that humanity had yet to understand. I spent more time praying and meditating. I read the Bible with a new perspective, realizing that Jesus' teachings were not just moral lessons, but actual guides for the human soul. I understood that God does not only want us to live well on earth, but also wants us to prepare for eternal life. A year after the accident, I received a special invitation. A Christian organization wanted me to share my story at a conference on near-death experiences. I agreed, and for the first time, I stood on stage in front of hundreds of people, recounting my miraculous journey. After the talk, an elderly woman approached me, tears streaming down her face. She held my hand and said, "My daughter just passed away from cancer. Your story has given me hope. Thank you for sharing." I hugged her, and at that moment, I knew why I was still alive. I had a mission, not just to live for myself, but to bring the light of heaven to those who were lost in darkness. Now, many years have passed since that fateful day, but every day I still remember my experience. I know that this life is temporary, that each of us has our own journey, and that when our time comes, we will not fall into oblivion, but will return to the one who created us. If you are afraid of death, if you feel lost in life, remember that you are not alone. God is always there, waiting for you to return. And if you are searching for meaning, listen to your heart. Perhaps, like me, you will realize that this life is only a small part of the soul's eternal journey.